All right, let's dive into something that, let's be honest, can feel incredibly complicated. We're talking about end times prophecy in the Bible. And today, we're going to unpack a framework from our source material that claims it has the one key to making all these seemingly contradictory pieces finally fit together. Have you ever done this? You read what Jesus says about the end of the age in, say, the book of Matthew, and then you flip over to what the Apostle Paul writes, and it feels like you're looking at two totally different pictures. If you have, you're definitely not alone. That apparent conflict is the exact problem we're going to tackle today. So the whole goal here is to really zoom in on this one specific key that our source material proposes. It's a single idea that's supposed to make all those confusing puzzle pieces finally lock into place. Now, before we get to the key itself, we gotta ask, why does any of this even matter? Well, our source material makes it really clear. Studying prophecy isn't supposed to be some kind of intellectual game. It's meant to be an anchor in a chaotic world, something that gives believers a solid foundation, strengthens their faith, and offers a really profound sense of hope. Okay, so what is this big solution? The source we're looking at suggests that there's one single central idea, what it calls a hermeneutical key, that can unlock this entire prophetic puzzle and bring everything into sharp focus. Now that word hermeneutics, it sounds super academic, right? But it's actually a pretty simple concept. All it means is the lens you use to interpret something. Think about it. If you change your lens, you can change your entire understanding of what you're reading. So, what is this new lens, this key? And here it is. This is the big idea. The core argument from our source is that the key to understanding all of this is asking one simple question. During his time on earth, who was Jesus really talking to, and what was his primary mission? So let's really dig into this key idea by looking at what our source says about Jesus's very specific mission to Israel. This is the absolute foundation for the whole framework we're going to talk about. Our source material points right here to this direct quote from Jesus as the absolute cornerstone of its argument. This isn't just some throwaway line, it's a mission statement. And it sets the context for pretty much everything he said and did during his ministry on earth. And you see this laser focus on Israel everywhere. I mean, his entire ministry was framed by covenants God made specifically with Israel. His parables, they're packed with Jewish cultural references. He even told his own disciples, hey, go to Israel first. It was the clear priority. Okay, so that's the key. But how does it actually work in practice? Well, let's put it to the test. Let's apply it to one of the most famous and, let's be honest, most debated end times prophecies in the whole Bible, Matthew 24. So here's the million-dollar question. When you're reading about the intense suffering and tribulation in this chapter, who is it for? According to our source, if we use the key, this understanding that Jesus is speaking to Israel and about Israel, the whole passage just snaps into focus. I mean, the clues are right there in the text. The geography is super specific, Judea. The main event he talks about, the abomination of desolation, that's a direct callback to a prophecy given to Israel by the prophet Daniel. And the whole conversation only started because his Jewish disciples asked him about the fate of their temple. And this framework also solves another huge puzzle. Why doesn't Jesus talk about the rapture of the church in Matthew 24? You know, the belief that believers will be taken up to meet Christ? Well, our source says it's simple. The rapture is part of a mystery that concerns the church, which wasn't even fully formed yet. Its unique destiny would be revealed later on. At this moment, Jesus' focus was squarely on Israel's timeline. And that brings us to what is arguably the most crucial point of this entire way of thinking. And that's the fundamental distinction our source makes between two groups in the Bible with two very different prophetic destinies, the nation of Israel and the church. See, in the language of the Bible, Israel is often pictured as God's wife who needs to be restored, while the church is called the bride of Christ. Their roles are completely different. Israel is destined to go through that intense period of judgment, the tribulation, for purification. But the church is promised deliverance from that period of wrath. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if the rapture is so important, why wasn't it known from the very beginning? And the source has an answer for that. The principle of progressive revelation. Just think about it. Core ideas like the Trinity were clarified over hundreds of years. So it's argued that, in the same way, the specific details about the church's destiny were revealed progressively, mainly through the Apostle Paul. So let's bring this all together.
Why does any of this matter to you and me right now? What's the practical takeaway from understanding this distinction between Israel and the church?
Well, it brings us right back to where we started. The source argues this whole framework isn't just an academic exercise. By making it clear that the church is destined for deliverance before that period of judgment, it provides this incredibly powerful blessed hope that can act as a real anchor of stability and peace for believers today. And that brings us to this final thought. This verse from Titus, it just perfectly captures the whole heart of our source material's argument. It reframes how we look at the end times, moving it away from fear and confusion and towards an active, joyful waiting for a promised hope. So the question it leaves us with is this: how does the lens we choose to read prophecy through actually shape the way we live our lives today?